Folks, in this video, I'm going to tell you about something very terrifying. There is apparently a sound or a microwave frequency that countries have managed to develop that can basically destroy your body without you even realizing it. And this secret weapon has apparently been used all around the world and is mainly being used to target Americans, to basically attack the Americans that are working abroad in other countries that are maybe hostile towards the United States. Now, this is called Havana syndrome. It's something that has been swept under the rug. Some people are calling it the CIA's biggest cover-up, but I'm going to break it all down to you in this video, and there's been a very big 60 minutes expose basically blowing the lid off this whole situation over the last few days, and it is really, really terrifying. It just goes to show that they can actually destroy your body, they can destroy your mind, they can attempt to kill you without you even realizing it, just you being near one of these hostile adversaries of the American people. So this is a video from Chuppel that's basically going to kind of explain a bit of background on the Havana syndrome and how basically this noise can actually destroy your body, and it is being secretly deployed against Americans around the world.
There's a sound that the CIA doesn't want you to know exists. We've obtained recently declassified whistleblower documents that allege that the CIA has been lying to Congress and the President of the United States to hide the sound. The allegations claim that the CIA suppressed witnesses and created a misinformation campaign against the U.S. public.
The whole intelligence community of the United States has publicly denied this ever happening.
If you hear the sound, it'll change the way your brain works.
It changes your life. It turns it upside down.
Since 2014, there have been over 1,500 reported cases of this sound. The sound has claimed victims on every continent besides Antarctica. The FBI, the DoD, and the CIA have dedicated millions of dollars in countless investigations to try to figure out where this sound is coming from. And supposedly, nobody knows.
What you all are saying is there's a government cover-up?
The public statements that the executive branch is making is inconsistent with the classified record.
Many months ago, I decided to look into it. And what I found was a cryptic maze, a story that the media got wrong, and then right, and then wrong, over and over again. This is a story about government cover-ups, whistleblowers, top secret documents, Cold War era technology.
Can you give us some details about how high this goes in our government?
I've been knee deep in countless academic articles, clinical studies, and official press briefings. I talked to the experts, advisors for DARPA, the DoD, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
I had been contacted by some colleagues from the Department of State. They said, we have a set of cases we'd like you to take a look at.
This story was swept under the rug, and the case was closed too early. This is the story of Havana syndrome.
The Biden administration is under pressure from Congress to investigate a growing number of mysterious attacks.
It's called Havana syndrome.
Havana syndrome.
Havana syndrome.
The bizarre illnesses reported over the years.
But no clear source of it all.
These debilitating medical ailments.
The overwhelming majority of evidence is hidden behind classified walls.
I have to be careful what I say here. So let me say this. I know where the bodies are buried. I know the cabinets to look in, the questions to ask, and the people to subpoena. Give me 20 minutes in a skiff, and I'll convince all of you.
All right, mysterious sound. Where do I start? In the fall of 2016, workers at the U.S. Embassy in Havana started sending reports up the chain of command. Some of them were at home, some of them were at a hotel room. It happened during the day, and it happened during the night. But all of them heard a sound. An intense, high-pitched, focused noise coming from a specific direction. If they walk away, they don't hear it. But if they walk back, they do. Here's what the sound does. Pressure, first in the head and then in the body. It sharpens, becoming unbearable. Their vision becomes blurry. The world starts spinning and their balance falters. Lights starting to hurt, and then they collapse. They wake up and go back to normal life. Though the sound is gone, their symptoms start to get worse. Fatigue, chronic headaches, vision problems, and balance issues. They can't concentrate. They can't work. They have a hard time sleeping. Their memory isn't the same, both long and short term. It's all jumbled. Time itself becomes confusing.
So look, that's enough of the backstory, okay? It is terrifying. So it started in Havana in Cuba. They basically shoot these radio waves. It can be in the hotel, it can be in the office, it can be at your home, it can be in a rented property, and you hear a loud squeak that you can move away from, you start getting crazy vision, you collapse. This is terrifying. So apparently, okay, the covert use of microwaves as a weapon has actually been a thing since the 1970s. This has been going on for quite some time, okay? This is a Guardian article. It says the US hid fears of radiation in Moscow embassy. Can we get rid of this? Hang on. All right, so it says the US hid fears of radiation in Moscow embassy in the 70s from staff, the documents revealed. Okay, President Ford and state secretaries complained to Soviet Union about health concerns over what they were calling it back then as the Moscow signal. Now it's the Havana syndrome, but back then it was the Moscow signal. So the US complained to the Soviet Union for more than a decade about microwave radiation directed at its embassy in Moscow, but it kept concerns secret from embassy staff for 9 years, according to newly declassified documents. The reported microwave radiation came to be known as the Moscow signal and was the source of frequent complaints from Washington. US officials were unsure of either the purpose of the signal or the potential health effects of long-term exposure to low-level microwave radiation. The declassified documents obtained by the National Security Archive at George Washington University provided a historical perspective on current anxiety about Havana syndrome, a cluster of mysterious neurological symptoms afflicting scores of US diplomats and spies, which the US believed might have been caused deliberately by some form of directed energy weapon. The first reference to the Moscow signal was in June 1967 at a State Department memo recording a conversation between US Secretary of State Dean Rusk and the Soviet Foreign Minister, Andrei Gromyko, in which Rusk raised the matter of electromagnetic signals aimed at the embassy in Moscow. Gromyko expressed skepticism about the claims, but Rusk insisted there was no doubt whatsoever about it and sketched a rough diagram to illustrate his point. Gromyko basically said he would look into the matter, but no change in the level of radiation was detected. Over the years that followed, the microwave signals multiplied and intensified. President Gerald Ford wrote to the Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev, in December 1975, these transmissions have created levels of radiation within the embassy which may, in the opinion of our medical authorities, represent a hazard to the health of our American families living and working in that building. Indeed, in one particular case, they may have already caused a serious health problem for one member of our embassy staff. Ford was almost certainly referring to the ambassador Walter Stossel, who became ill with leukemia at that time and died of the disease a decade later. In his reply to the president, Brezhnev insisted the electromagnetic field around the US embassy was of industrial origin. Despite US fears about the health effects, embassy staff were not informed, apparently because of concerns the story would leak to the media and upset arms control negotiations within Moscow. Stossel's illness was kept secret. In a 1975 conversation with then Soviet ambassador in Washington, Anthony Dobrynin, the US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger asked for the signal to be turned off before he made a planned visit to Moscow, or he joked, "You could give me a radiation treatment." We really are sitting on it here, but too many people know about it. Kissinger told the ambassador, "If it was discovered that the Nixon and Ford administrations had known about the problem and done nothing to stop it, we will catch hell." So, jump forward to 2016. That's when the first instances of Havana syndrome, the same situation coming out of Cuba, would officially be reported on around 2016, 2017.
I woke up in the middle of the night with an incredible case of vertigo. The room was spinning. I wanted to throw up.
Mark Polymeropoulos, a former U.S. intelligence officer at the CIA, was hit in 2017 by an invisible attack in a Moscow hotel.
I'd been in places like, Iraq and Afghanistan. I'd been shot at, but this was by far the most terrifying experience of my life.
It's a mystery that's plagued the U.S. intelligence community and the State Department for years. An attack which brain experts now say was likely the result of a microwave weapon, hitting American personnel in Cuba, China, Russia, and other places around the globe. The U.S. government has not identified the perpetrator, but current and former U.S. officials believe Russia is to blame. The Russian government did not respond to CNN's request for comment. The attack impacted his balance, sight, and hearing. The pain has never wholly subsided.
I couldn't, make it through the day, not even close. I've had a headache every day since that night in Moscow. It's never gone away, day and night.
He had to retire early, and for a dedicated CIA officer who spent his entire career fighting terrorists in the Middle East, it hasn't been easy to accept that an invisible strike took him out of the game.
I rather would have been shot. This was a silent wound. You would
have rather been shot?
Absolutely.
Why?
It's something that I could have shown people. I had a really hard time initially at the agency because people didn't necessarily, the senior medical staff didn't necessarily believe me.
Paula Meropoulos had to fight to get expert health care. Just this month, he finished specialized treatment at Walter Reed Medical Center, more than 3 years after that traumatic night in Moscow.
When they provided me the piece of paper with the diagnosis that said I had a traumatic brain injury, I had tears in my eyes.
Some 40 U.S. government officials have experienced symptoms similar to his. In 2017, the U.S. Embassy in Cuba slashed its staff because the attacks were so pervasive. A newly declassified State Department report points to systemic disorganization when the department began handling this crisis during the Trump administration. New Hampshire Senator Jeanne Shaheen has been fighting to get the victims medical assistance and answers about who did this.
So I've got a little bioweapon right in front of me right now, funnily enough. But basically, these attacks have been absolutely destroying Americans' health all over the world. It is actually out of control now, and it hasn't stopped. Okay, from the Russians in the 70s to basically Cubans in what would you call that? The teens, not the 20s. Yeah, I guess the 20 teens. That sounds a bit weird. But basically, all the way up to 2020, reports would come out then that Canadian officials were actually silenced after also experiencing similar attacks.
We don't hold.
Ooh, new clip.
Chile.
For Canadian diplomats, the sun, culture, and political intrigue of Havana, Cuba was a dream posting. But in 2017, that all changed when 5 embassy staff and their families suddenly developed medical issues that would become known as the Havana syndrome. One staffer currently involved in a $28 million lawsuit against the federal government and who was given the pseudonym Diplomat Allen by the courts says he was awoken by a mysterious sound in the middle of the night.
A screeching, metallic scraping noise that just flooded the room. And I listened to it for about 20 or 30 seconds, and then as it was fading, it went woo, 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 woo.
He says he was overcome with nausea, and at the same time his eldest son's nose started gushing blood. When he reported what happened, weeks before, he says a Miami neurologist diagnosed he, his wife, and 2 sons with mild traumatic brain injuries, he says he was told to stay quiet.
The one thing the ambassador told me that at that time was that do not tell any other Canadians. We cannot start mass hysteria.
Global News has obtained over 700 pages of heavily redacted documents related to the case that appear to corroborate plaintiff claims that officials were more interested in keeping the story quiet than finding the cause. In multiple documents, officials referred to attacks, but after it was reported that 40 U.S. Embassy personnel had the same symptoms, officials decided to stop using the word. The cause of the debilitating sound is still a mystery. One expert believes it was the mating call of the Indie short-tailed cricket. And when
So they're trying to say that it's the sound mating call of a cricket. They want to cover it up. They don't want anyone to know that their people are being attacked like this because they can't do anything about it, and it would cause a mass hysteria. But it's wrong. It's wrong for them to cover this up because they're not letting the victims of these horrible attacks actually, get the help or the support or the action that they actually need. It's a huge scandal. So jumping forward to March of 2023, that's when the intelligence community had basically concluded that it's very unlikely that this attack was from an enemy. But again, this leads to more calls of a cover-up. They don't want to admit that they're being attacked.
The top line is exactly what you just said, that the members of the intelligence community participating in this found it, quote, very unlikely a foreign adversary was responsible, very unlikely a weapon or any device purposely or accidentally caused the symptoms, and there's not even a consistent set of physical injuries that could be characterized as Havana syndrome. Now, there are varying levels of confidence, and not the entire intelligence community participating in this, but for the IC, this is as emphatic a conclusion as it makes. On serious conditions that we're talking about that Americans suffered in Cuba, in China, Americans who worked on Russia, even the U.S. officials who suffered this here in the United States. But one official told us today, we cannot tie a foreign adversary to any of those incidents.
So what evidence does the intelligence community provide to back that up?
The intelligence briefers who talked to me and about a dozen reporters today, one official said intelligence points against against foreign involvement. And this official said that adversaries, including China and Russia, expressed some confusion when the U.S. started reporting Havana symptoms. Many thought this was a U.S. plot to blame them for something. There was no evidence, this official went on to say, that Ukrainians or any kind of partner country suffered from any systematic attack, or any evidence that an adversary was even practicing this kind of attack. Again, evidence that they would have seen if they believed an adversary was behind this.
So look, they're saying there was no evidence that an adversary was behind this, but it just makes you see it can't be a coincidence that all of these Americans are getting sick and having their health absolutely destroyed when they're working in embassies at hostile countries. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to put two and two together. Now, a year would pass, and in 2024, they would change their tune a little bit. Then the attacks would be linked to the Russians in an investigation by 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley has been investigating this story for 5 years. He has the story of an active FBI agent identified as Carrie, who says she was hit with what she believes was a directed energy weapon. You can watch Scott Pelley.
Very disturbing, right? Very suspicious. So there's Russians over here with these secret weapons, riding around, doing the dash, running away, skating from the police in Mustangs. What the hell is going on here? Now, we didn't hear about these secret microwave attacks until the Americans were dishing them out. And basically, during the U.S. attack in Venezuela that resulted in the capture of their president, Nicolas Maduro, it would then be reported that the U.S. was flipping the script using the Uno reverse card and deploying their own dangerous microwave weapons.
Sensational.
Discombobulate soldiers there.
New account of the Delta Force raid to captureless Nicolas Maduro, reposted on X by the White House press secretary, includes this eyebrow-raising detail from one of Maduro's bodyguards about the way the Americans disabled them. The quote is, "At one point they launched something. I don't know how to describe it," he said. "It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly I felt like my head was exploding from the inside."
Sounds very, very similar. Now, as of 2026, the Americans are still investigating what could be causing these attacks on their own people. And interestingly enough, the Pentagon would actually come out recently and admit they're actually testing a mysterious device that they bought in an undercover operation to basically try and do a sting and find out where these weapons are coming from, who's using them, how can we get our hands on them. And apparently they bought one and are now testing it.
Well, we're learning that the Pentagon is testing a device that could be behind mysterious ailments that hit American spies, diplomats and troops. The illness first emerged nearly 10 years ago. That's when US diplomats in Havana, Cuba, reported vertigo, severe headaches and other signs of trauma. Later cases of so-called Havana syndrome were reported worldwide. Sources say the device was purchased for millions of dollars in an undercover operation in the last days of the Biden administration. Senior national security reporter Zach Cohen joins us now from Washington. What more are you learning about this, Zach?
Yeah, it's interesting. Sources telling us that the Pentagon spent millions of dollars to purchase this device as part of an undercover operation conducted jointly with the Department of Homeland Security in the waning days of the Biden administration, and that U.S. officials have spent over a year now examining the device, studying it, and still have not definitively concluded whether or not it is linked to those mysterious health incidents. Over a dozen that we know of have been reported. But there is evidence suggesting, new evidence suggesting that it potentially was. And we're learning from our sources that the makeup of this device really is something that investigators have honed in on. They've found that the device produces what's known as pulsed radio waves. That's something U.S. officials and academics have long speculated to be the source, the cause of these symptoms that have been reported by U.S. spies, diplomats, and troops around the world, and some domestically. We're also learning that while not entirely Russian in origin, the device is comprised of various Russian components, which obviously raises significant concerns and questions about a country that the U.S. considers to be a foreign adversary potentially having some role in developing this device that is suspected of being used to target U.S. officials around the world. And we're also told, too, that a key part of this is that the device is relatively small and it can fit into a backpack. And that gets to one of the core questions that has been on the top of mind for U.S. officials is how can a device that cause so much damage, the damage that's been reported by these victims, but also be portable? It seems this device would check that box as well. So we're going to continue to push the U.S. government, the U.S. intelligence community, the Pentagon, and Department of Homeland Security for more more clarity on this. You may remember that the CIA, their response to these victims has really shifted over time. Those victims feel largely that the Biden administration and to date the Trump administration has largely dismissed their reported symptoms, their call.
So it's in the best interest of the government to downplay this thing, but as you can see, they're spending millions of dollars buying these devices and undercover sting operations, trying to get to the bottom of how Americans are getting targeted by this stuff. So look, let me know if you thought that was interesting. I saw that story going around and I thought it was really fascinating, and I honestly just wanted to dig into it myself. It's really, really scary. The idea that somebody can just slide on you with a microwave device from outside your property and just ruin your health for the rest of your life is damn terrifying. Okay, so if I hear any more about this, I'll let you guys know. Let me know if you found that interesting. I did actually do an Epstein video today, but YouTube won't let me post it, so I'm going to try and get that up for you guys at least in the next day. Sorry if it was a bit of a content drought today. I had better intentions, but I cannot drop probably the best video that I recorded for you guys today. So we're talking about some other things, and I will be back tomorrow with some more updates for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, guys, I'm out of here. Peace.